Thank you for having me. So, as Salvatore said, I'm the General Manager of Purpose at Intrepid Travel. We're a global tour operator headquartered in Australia, but we have 26 different what we call destination management companies globally. And we sell about 1,100 trips. And before COVID, we were carrying close to 500,000 passengers a year. So we're a big business, quite a complex business. I think we're up to about 40 different business entities within our group at the moment. So my job is really to, increase the impact we have in sustainability, the positive impact, and the areas that we really focus on are what I call kind of 3 areas. So there's climate action, so the work that we do to ensure that we're starting to reduce our climate emissions. We've got approved science-based targets that we're working towards achieving over the next 10 years. And we also have been offsetting our carbon emissions since 2010. So we do a lot of work in the business to actually advocate through the travel sector for more businesses to join us on that climate action journey. Then we also look at the social side, and we really try and ensure that we're spreading the benefits of tourism to more communities and to more people who aren't traditionally reached by tourism. So we have a big focus on Indigenous communities, and particularly in Australia, we've actually really, progressed our impact in that area. And over the past couple of years, we've gone from working with 12 different experiences to 50 and more than 100 Indigenous experiences globally. So that's an area that we're really trying to focus on going forward. And then the last area is actually just growing the market for sustainable tourism. And we do that by ensuring that we have credibility as a business. And the B Corp certification is a source of credibility for us. It's also a source of accountability, as it's third-party audited. And it ensures that we're measuring all areas of workers, customers, the governance, the environment, and the community areas within the B Corp certification across all of our business entities. So we try and take a really holistic, a deep approach to sustainability, which is, always challenging across a global business. So that hopefully should give you a bit of a snapshot of what we do.
Thank you very much. I welcome as well, meanwhile, the people who are connected right now. I remind you that you can pose your question in the public chat. We will answer to the questions later in the second session of the panel discussion. Meanwhile, we've been talking about tour operators, yet how they operate, let's say, on the destinations, but we need to see also the organizational side of the destination as well. And on this point, I would like to introduce you Marcello Notarianni. He has an extensive experience in fields of hospitality and tourism, with experience all across the world with organizations which are intergovernmental, governmental, so UNWTO, UNDP, UNESCO, Swiss Contact, GIZ, and so on, and many, of course, other experiences as researcher with university, etc. Right now, he is a senior associate at SMA Tourism. And I think with this company, you're bringing forward some interesting destination management projects. And I would like to know, how do you work with destinations to make them more sustainable, how you do it? And especially, I've taken a look at your projects, and I see sometimes you work with really sensible environments. How do you make sure that the tourism can be brought to the destination without interfering with the destination itself? Microphone.
Yes. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you, Salvatore, and your organization to invite me to this interesting panel. My name is Marcello Notarianni. I am Italian, but I'm based in Madrid, Spain, working with SMA Tourism. It's a consultancy based in Australia. And basically what we do, in particular for destination, we are doing three activity. that is diagnosis and planning. So we diagnose what the market wants, what experience are driving for the brand, and what product needed for reinvigoration. We do also feasibility study through our experience, research and market testing. We build competitiveness and then detailed forecast, so it's clear what makes the business work. And finally, we do product development, so we reinvigorate and develop experience that meet fulfilling the customer needs, leaving the destination or business more competitively, positioning to attract greater market share and customer yield. Inside of the three aspects, we are working transversally with the sustainability through a real holistic approach. In particular, we have developed since some years. Specifically, it's an evolution of the TOM approach. TOM is the touristic optimization management model in order to better manage the visitors in the destination. We call our model the sustainable tourism model. Since we realize since many years that the plans are like photos, so almost as soon the shoot is taken, the people in place changes. So we decided to develop a model. This model is based on four pillars. The model is based on four pillars, so it's based on health economy. So how healthy is the economy of the destination? Healthy environment, so how healthy is the environment? Healthy host community and healthy visitor experience. In particular, what the model is divided in three parts. The three parts taking into account the optimal conditions, so defining what healthy tourism should look like. Second, the monitoring, checking how close reality is to our optimal condition. And finally, we have what we call adaptive management. It's deciding what we are going to do if monitoring say that we aren't where we want to be. So in the three parts, we consider always the four factors: so community, economy, visitor experience, environment, and for the all parts. What is really important from the beginning is the engagement of the stakeholders into this process, and in particular the commitment of the destination management should be in order to be successful in this model. We apply this model in some destination. In particular, we start with some destination in Australia, in Kangaroo Islands, and after we have done also in a Kew station near Sydney, and in Shoalhaven, that is a beach, it's coastal region in the south of Sydney. By the way, we have done also this model in other destinations. At the present also in Mozambique, in a sensitive area, in a coastal area, and also in the Bahamas. Maybe if there is any question during the webinar, I will be happy to provide you more information. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I will go first around. I know it's really difficult to get the engagement and involvement of the stakeholders on the changing of new plans to conduct a plan conjunctly. So I understand that's quite difficult. So I'll have some questions for you later. So we've been talking about the destination and tour operator as well with Sarah King about these. Let's go more a little bit now, just a short question to Alessandro Colosimo, because he's working in Up2U. Up2U is a startup that works a lot with making businesses more sustainable or for carbon offset compensation. So Alessandro started his career as a chemical analyst in the luxury fashion sector, but has great interest in business development, marketing, and innovation. And that's why he's in this innovative startup right now, which is called Up2U. Tell us a little bit more, what did you do with Up2U, and specifically with tour operators? What's your input to make, from an environmental point of view, these companies more sustainable?
Hi everyone, and thanks Salvatore for the brief introduction. So before answering the question about tour operator, I would like to give a brief introduction about who is Up2U and what we do. So Up2U is an innovative startup and certified B Corp that allow companies to reduce their environmental impact. We offset and neutralize CO2 emissions and then certify the commitment on blockchain. We encourage sustainable action and study low impact business model. And at Up2U, we create digital tools to make every company greener, and we offer services to measure, reduce, and offset emissions, but also engage the employees of the company. And about tour operators, we are at Up2U. We are aware that travels has a great importance in the world of tourism. In fact, travels are the most impactful source in terms of CO2 emission from this point of view. And for this reason, we thought it was important to create a solution for travel agencies as well. As always, everything starts with the calculation. So in this case, we at Up2U are going to calculate the emissions of the various trips, obviously in terms of CO2, and then having estimated the emissions of the travels offers, we neutralize them through internationally certified projects chosen by the agency itself. And the agency then will then give the customers a ticket with a QR code that they can use to support one of the projects chosen. And then customers will receive a digital certification, which can be branded by with the tour operator's logo, and will be able to share it on social network, giving visibility to the company initiative. The ticket is paper and look like a slightly old-fashioned ticket, which therefore also remains as a souvenir for the customer. So this is what we do with tour operators, and I hope was interesting.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alessandro. And talking about environmental sustainability, a really important topic that revolves a lot when we talk about tourism and travel is aviation. And regarding that, I would like to introduce you Paolo Lonati. He is a really interesting lecturer. He's a Bocconi alumni, has acquired over 10 years experience in civil aviation, has long worked with American Airlines in commercial and leadership roles in Europe, now recently joined Qatar Airways as well as leader of sales operation for the Department of Europe. So a first generic question, because we see that the aviation sector is always the aviation industry is always targeted as one of the most polluting ones due to carbon emissions. So I would like to have a view from you, and what's your point of view also on what the carriers are doing, the airlines are doing in this moment, if they're doing enough, if they're up to pace to make travel more sustainable, and in general, your point of view on the industry. Thank you.
Good morning, Salvatore. Thank you, and good morning, all. So very glad to be here this morning. Yes, it's a very hot topic at the moment. Aviation industry is often on the newspaper, on the news. There is, of course, a lot of criticism and focus from environmentalists. So it's important to keep the attention on that one. But on the other side, aviation industry globally produce between the 2 and the 3% of the global carbon emission at the moment. So it's a very small part compared to other industry. They are contributing, unfortunately, more. So definitely there is also a strategy in aviation industry to try to become net zero. Most of the airline and the aviation alliances, such as oneworld, Star Alliance, or SkyTeam, are setting a goal by 2015 to be net zero. But definitely, we are not the most polluted industry, and is definitely our life depends more on most travels, and including cargo travel. So it's very important, I think, that we all focus on becoming net zero, sustainable, and try to educate also passenger of all the activities where they can actually offset their carbon emission when they travel. The aviation industry, I think they are in a good path. They're doing all they can do. They're investing in research. They are partnering with many airlines. Most of the carriers, especially the biggest one, are very creative in how they can partnering with their customer, the final passengers, in order to offset the carbon emissions. And one of the most important initiative, of course, is sustainable aviation fuel that, if used, can reduce the carbon emission during a flight by 80%, minimum 80%. Sustainable aviation fuel is made by vegetable oils or corn that has been basically reutilized and became fuel, so it's absolutely sustainable. The challenge here, of course, is sustainable aviation fuel is still very expensive, very similar to jet fuel, because unfortunately 92% of the sustainable aviation fuel today in the world is produced by only 4 companies, 4 producers. So there are not enough sustainable aviation fuel at the moment that can be produced globally to support the demand, because carriers keep asking, and there's still a long queue of demand of order for sustainable aviation fuel. United States are leading this type of list. They're definitely more focused than others in becoming net zero. But it's definitely an investment for everyone, for all the stakeholders involved, with not only carriers. Some has also talked about using hydrogen and try to change the way we are flying and the engines. Hydrogen could be the future, but it's quite far, probably 20 or 30 years, because it's a technology that need to be developed and need to be safe. But in the meantime, sustainable aviation fuel and other initiatives, other partnership, they're very important to offset this carbon emission. Some carriers, like I mentioned, for example, Virgin is planning to be net zero by 2030. Other carriers, like I mentioned, it could be Etihad is actually partnering with the corporate market, offering a loyalty program. If you offset your carbon emission on each travel, there are many tools in the market that you can use it, many portals where you calculate the carbon, your carbon footprint, and so you can actually offset. So I invite everyone, all this audience, to actually take a look, and every time you go on vacation or you travel for business, to look at your carbon footprint and how you can actually tackle this plug.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paolo, for this first question. On same question, I would like also a view from Cristina Chimenti, because she is a global travel management, so she works a lot with travel procurement. She joined Sky in 2011, working with finance a lot. So we also see that we need to meet, in a sense, the finance side, if we talk especially about business travel, the finance side, and the sustainability. So how to connect the finance with the CSR, also actions from the companies. What's your view in general about the sustainable aviation fuel? And if you want to add something about what do you preview for the future?
Sure. So I'm also part of the Institute of Travel Management on their board in the UK, and that gives me quite good visibility on what is happening on the business travel side. Because like me, there is quite a lot of other travel buyers. They've all been tasked with this new projects that are like sustainable. A lot of companies have actually very early targets, like 2030. So similar to what Virgin has. I mean, my company, Sky, has a target to 2030. In the industry, you will probably find that the vast majority of big corporations, they're trying to get towards 2030. So when we're talking about airlines being net zero by 2050, there is quite a big gap, because we have tasked to be very sustainable much quicker than what the airlines can do. Paolo's been talking about SAF, Sustainable Aviation Fuel. I think most companies that I spoke to, most colleagues that I spoke to, they're all extremely interested in that. I think in the industry, there is, everybody wants to do it. Everybody wants to do the right thing. But there's quite a lot of questions on how do you do it? Like, what exactly in practice are you able to do when there are constraints on a financial point of view, there are constraints on SAF productions, and there are so many things that we need to investigate. So I think one of the things that I noticed that is being done quite a lot, and is just quite easy to do for a lot of companies, is working on their policies and try and maybe limit or reduce the amount of unnecessary travel, because that is the actual easiest path. Also trying to be sustainable when you're making your choices. So try and pick airlines that maybe have newer aircrafts instead of the older one, because they're obviously going to be more sustainable. Or from a personal point of view, just ask the question, do you actually need to have a suitcase and put it in a hold when you're traveling for work and you're maybe only away for 2 days? Can you not just get a carry on board? Because that is going to actually help you saving some CO2 emissions. So on one side, there is easy actions that we are trying to focus on, and we can inform people that they can do. And that's easily applied by everybody in the personal sphere and in the business sphere. And then from a more costly point of view, there's activities like sustainable aviation fuel, as Paolo said, is expensive, is way more expensive than normal fuel. So if we want to do the right thing and investing in that, that's great, but we need to have a budget to be able to do that. And where is that budget coming from? And those are questions that we could ask on a regular basis. And then on the other side is, okay, let's say we have found the budget. How much there is available to buy? Because we can't simply buy it to offset 100% of our business travel, because there's not enough to go around. So I think there are some short-term activities that we can do, and they're probably the easy ones that we can already start with while we're waiting for maybe the industry to catch up and other organizations to come in onto this field and maybe offering additional solutions or alternatives that we can also pick on. But I would say in the business world, being sustainable is something that in the last 2 years has really come to the forefront of every company attention. And I think a lot of travel managers, they're all extremely worried because the timescales to get there, they're very short. And we need to be very creative on how do we go about it. And the other side that I don't think has been touched very much just now, but is also causing us problems in the industry, is how do you measure it? Because how do you measure CO2 emissions? I think we are probably much better at tackling CO2 emissions and reducing that than what we've been given credit for, because some of the calculations that they have been used in the industry, they're actually quite antiquated, and they don't necessarily take in consideration the age of the aircrafts or other items that have been introduced recently. And then, as a business traveler, if I'm going online and trying to book my trip, booking one, booking the other, or booking something else is exactly the same CO2 emission on paper, although in practice we know is completely different. So that's something else that if it gets improved, potentially is going to give us better visibility on what we can tackle and how we can change it.
Thank you. Yeah, you were talking about policies, and me as a first person, I used to work as a business travel agent as well in a consultancy. And it's difficult to assess policies, in my view, because sometimes you have really important meetings that you have to do or formation that you have to do, and you have to schedule a last time flight on the same day. So you can make policies, but then depending on the importance, let's say, of the task, there might be exceptions. So it's not easy to define these policies. So generically you say, yes, if it's this kind of travel, you don't do it unless it's of really extreme importance or whatever as a policy, because in the end, it's something to work on the CSR, and let's say it's not the same as working for the business itself, for the economic value of the business itself. And I would like at this point also ask your view, and also on Paolo, because I was also reading about some airlines starting, not only airlines but the providers, to invest on electric vehicles. I know there's some prototypes for smaller carriers. In general, what's your view, Cristina, about electric vehicles, if they're practical? And then with Paolo, I would like to ask, how's the aviation going in that direction? If there's any progress in that direction? Cristina, please.
So from a EV point of view, I think is a great idea to use them. Although from a business point of view, is a slightly different issue than what we have in the leisure world or just the consuming world. If you're on the road for business, the likelihood is that you will have quite a lot of mileage to go through. And if electric vehicles can only support a range of 200-300 miles, you're going to be quite restricted on how much time you can spend on traveling from A to B. And then you need to also plan where are you going to recharge and the time that it takes to recharge cars. So it gets quite tricky to employ a fully electric fleet in businesses. So I think it is just a question of looking at what alternatives we can use in the business world and trying to really very much look at what kind of journeys do they need to be doing, basically the business requires, and target that with maybe an hybrid fleet and an electric fleet, so that you can use the best transport mode for what your employee require. if you're a sales guy that does 1,000 kilometers or 1,000 miles a day, an electric car is going to be quite a troublesome one. An hybrid one will probably be more suitable. But if you are a person that only goes around in a local area and spends more time with the customers, for example, than on the road, then potentially electric is absolutely perfect, because when you're taking it back to the company, you can probably charge it up when you're parked in the car park. So it's just, it's not 100% here, and especially because the network for electric vehicles in especially in the UK, is getting there, but it's still a little bit farther away than what we would like it to be. And it's all based on the distance and how fast that you can recharge those cars, because in the business, time is money. And if you have to spend 2 hours on recharging a car, when a petrol vehicle or a diesel vehicle is going to take you 5 minutes, you can see that the economics are going to be a little bit off.
Yeah, absolutely. Paolo, your point of view also for the aviation on that, how's the aviation moving?
Yeah, so on the aviation perspective, of course, when we talk to be net zero, is not only related to the actual takeoff and landing and cruise. There are all the operation of the ground. They need to be set up from a cargo perspective, or to move passenger between terminals, or from the terminal to the aircraft. So there are those operations, and there are few carriers actually that are using electric vehicle on the ground. There are some airports that are more sensitive than others. So it's definitely an investment that is coming more often, and it actually makes sense, because definitely the cost on a long term could be reduced. On the other side, we need to make an actually clarification, because in all the part of the world, or most of the part of the world, it's more airport management company. Some of them are government company. They actually take care of all the operation in the airports, while in the United States there is a regulation which the carrier is responsible of those operations. So you can see, if you flew in the United States in the past, that all these ground services operation on the airfield reports the logo on those caddy and those cars, because actually they are property of the carriers. So in that case, probably United States will be much easier to switch to electric vehicle for ground transportation, but it's definitely it's an added value on the entire big picture. And on the other side, I want to take just 15 seconds to actually support what Cristina said before about budget. It is true, budget is very important. Corporation or normal passenger, they need to be also financially sustainable. So not all the time there are the budget to actually be net zero or offset the carbon emission. And in this case, I like to highlight the fact that aviation industry in Europe is the only one that actually is paying a carbon emission tax by the European Union. And unfortunately, we don't know where this money are going or are invested. It would be good if the European Union would convert and would actually channel those money into the industry, buying sustainable aviation fuel, or to actually support those companies. They can be, and they want to be, more sustainable. That's a kind of clarity that's still needed in all industry, because most of the time we offset our we offset our carbon emission, but then we don't know where this money, this investment are going, and how can we use it.
Thank you. As said, the economical side is important from a business point of view, but also from leisure point of view. I see Marcello want to add something on this point.
Yes. Thank you very much. It's very interesting, the discussion for aviation. Just I would like to also add a few things from the point of view of the tourism industry, that since the COVID has come and impact, we know that there was a shifting between much more long from the long haul to the short less distance destinations. So now many destination also is pushing to have a much more tourists coming from with the train and using the train at least for short and medium distance. Also, I read that the French government for the next year is trying to ban the low carrier airplane in France, and trying to push much more the use of the train. Also, in this way, the Spanish government is doing an effort in order to reduce the price of the train and pushing the use of the train not only for tourists but for everyone. So there is also some other measure that could reduce the CO2 impact. Just for remind. Thanks.
Thank you, Marcello. Thank you, absolutely. Also, would like to see the point of view of Sarah on these, because she, of course, sees the leisure side of what the mobility part of the travel. How is the mobility part of the travel affecting all the budget and the sustainability of the travel itself?
Yeah, thanks. I definitely echo Christina's challenges here in terms of infrastructure and just the operational, I guess, whether it actually makes sense operationally to make these changes in certain countries right now. There are challenges, but I think it's exciting though at the same time to see that there is innovation happening at the same time. And one of our destinations recently ran a trip in Sri Lanka, actually, that was fully done by an EV vehicle. It was a small trip. There were only 2 people, but they managed to do the whole destination in an EV. So I think there's going to be a lot of change in this space quite quickly over the next kind of 5 years, which will hopefully make it easier for larger companies, like Qatar or others to actually achieve these types of goals. But I definitely echo the involvement of government and the need for support, because unless things are actually regulated and actually supported, it just makes it a lot harder to achieve these types of targets.
Thank you. Well, it's really amazing that they were able to do the whole tour in EV. So good for them, good for you for Intrepid Travel. And but also I would like to know, instead, with the hospitality part. So let's say hotels and structures that where your guests are staying. How do you manage to find the right providers, to find the right hotels where to allocate your guests? And how do you measure if there are good hotels, let's say, that are careful on the sustainability part?
That's a great question. The traditional way, I guess, of evaluating whether a hotel is sustainable is looking at whether they are, sustainably certified. That's probably the best kind of practice approach, and that means they would get, third-party audited, and they would be measuring and managing their impact. But the amount of certified hotels in the world is actually quite small, and it's hard to find them. So there's innovation happening in this space. There's an organisation called Travelist, which is actually started by Prince Harry, and he is backing it. And it's an organisation that's working across large organisations like Expedia, Google, Booking.com. And they're trying to roll out a set of indicators that can be used across the board to measure the sustainability of different sectors, including aviation and hotels. And while this is not, I guess third party validated, what we're doing is driving awareness and driving change, I think, and data gathering across the sector, and they're signifying that to customers on their sites. And so for us, that makes it a lot easier to find sustainable hotels, because that's been done in a mainstream kind of way now, and you can find them in a lot easier. So that type of change, where it's happening in a scalable kind of way, will really help to drive, I guess, education, awareness, and then accountability eventually, once we figure out the auditing and the verification side at that level. But again, it's exciting to see these changes happening.
Thank you. And on this same point, I would like to see Alessandro's point, because I think he can help with this. What's Up2You doing? Because I know Up2You started with hospitality, and it's also interesting to understand how do you manage to keep guests also involved into the activities. After this question, we will start also with the question and answer session from the public chat. Thank you, Alessandro.
We are Up2You. Think that it's important to involve guests for an hotel and make them participate in the path that the accommodation facility wanted to start towards sustainability. And so we create a service called Don't Disturb. Basically, it allows your guests to make their stay green through the hotel, and all this takes place using the Don't Disturb hook, which once hang on the door indicates that your guests are giving up the room makeover service. So the cleaning staff, noticing the hook, skip the makeover of the room and leave your guests a plantable paper note with a QR code that will allow them to plant a tree. And so in this way, they can reward. And as the tour operator system, guests will then receive a digital certificate, which can be branded with the hotel's logo, for example, and will be able to share the certificate on the social network. In this way, the hotels have visibility. And so this is our service for the hotel.
Thank you. Very interesting, absolutely, and quite interactive as well. Let's start reading some questions. Marcello, I have some questions for you. Ariana was asking, when you meet a destination that doesn't meet your requirements, let's say on the way people work, the working environment, so the set, let's say, of the cultural set of the place, how do you approach the destination? How do you effectively make them bring change?
Thank you. It's a very interesting question, but it's quite difficult to answer, because our approach is like this. It's a combination of careful site investigation and also consultation tailored to diverse type of stakeholders, directly and indirectly involved in tourism. Once we have done this kind of situational analysis, we can also try to propose some activity in order to better engage the local population. Usually, we do also some sensitiveness awareness campaign, or we try to do this kind of participatory workshop in order to receive a feedback from the stakeholders and from the community. It's a sort of process that takes time, and a need also, as I mentioned in the first part of my intervention, the commitment of the management. These are important. The leaders are very important in the destination. So if they really want to make changes, we develop some tailored program in order to reach reach the goals. But this is it's important to say we don't have the magical wheel. We need the time to do this. It's a process. And it's a continuous process in order also to reach the sustainability. I remember when I wrote my first book on ecotourism, I called this the Ecotourism Challenge, and it's still a challenge now to reach the sustainability in tourism. Thanks.
Thank you. There's also another question from Deborah asking about indicators and methodology, but I think it's quite a specific question. If you have any links, I'd suggest I can share them, or she can get in contact with me, because it's quite specific. Or you want to add something on the methodology behind community economic and environment and visitors experience assessment that you apply at the destination.
Okay. Thank you. So just briefly for the methodology that you use, we use this impact monitoring. We collect information that helps to understand what the impacts are. Second, where the impacts occur, because sometimes you don't know. Sometimes we think that occur some impacts related with tourism, but it's not for tourism. How frequently the impacts happen, the extent of the impacts, also the consequences of the impacts. For other information, I will be if you can share with the people, my contact will be happy also to provide information about the indicators. But in any case, the indicators that we use, we already contributed in 2005 to the maybe many people knows this UNWTO publication on indicators on tourism. Maybe I can show you, these are the cover, and we have used, we have contributed to this. It's really big, but now we have new indicators so that, for example, the European Union has, but I suggest that every single destination should develop their indicators based on the availability, based on the availability, but also timing, and also is the relevance of the indicators according to the type of impact related to tourism. Thank you.
Thank you. A question for Paolo from Len. She asks, why are airlines not investing in sustainable fuel companies? They can use the money from extra fee on the ticket price to solve the shortage. Do you think this is something feasible? I think this affects a lot, let's say, the economical side. What's your view on that?
Well, I mean, some carriers actually are doing that, are investing in, or trying to invest in, some of them, in sustainable aviation company that already exist, or they are partnering somehow. I don't think we're gonna see, at least in the near future, some carrier that actually start taking over a sustainable aviation fuel production. It's a different business model, and I don't think it would work also from a financial perspective, and especially those producers, they retain a know-how that cannot be replicated at the moment. I think in that case, most carriers actually finding a more creative way to try to support those producers, or try to use more sustainable aviation fuel. I would say that all the carriers that I've studied or worked for, they are totally all in into aviation fuel. also because it's lighter than jet fuel, even if the cost of jet fuel and sustainable aviation fuel, as I said before, is basically the same. So it's not going to save any money on the ticket, on the SEP, at least now. When the offer will be higher than the demand, probably in that case, we're going to have this financial metrics that could help eventually putting down the cost of the carriers and then probably tickets or in general additional services. So what carriers actually they're doing, especially on a corporate market, on a business travel, and this mainly UK, but mostly in the US, is to partner with their clients, corporate clients, to invite them, especially big corporation with a big travel program, to buy actually directly sustainable aviation fuel. So we had a few examples on I think last year was Google interesting in this one. So Google actually buy directly by different US carriers sustainable aviation fuel directly. So the carriers, they can use that funds to support Google Travels when all the Google's employees, management travel all around the world. So that's actually another idea, but still a lot to discover on this part. It's really the time to be also creative in this arena.
Thank you very much. I continue with just another few questions because we are close to the limit, but we have a networking meeting in 2 weeks from now. So for professionals, you can get in contact with me and I can provide you access to the networking meeting, and where we will have our panelists of today, and we can discuss furthermore on the topic and make some connections and networking. So let me continue with another question. What about the gap for cruise lines becoming emission-free? Maybe Sara, do you work with the cruise lines? What do you have a view on that? Do you know something?
We don't actually work with the cruise lines, but that's a good question. They are high emitters, I guess, in the tourism industry, and there is a need, I think, for them to join the net zero journey as well. So hopefully, we'll see more news around that in the coming years with their commitments. I think there is a lot of work behind the scenes happening, advocating for them to join this journey. So yeah. Stay tuned, I guess.
All right, thank you. Another question from Priyanka. Participation of national and subnational government stakeholders are also critical partners in ecotourism. Can we say that they will be more interested to introduce policy level change and actionable interventions if outcomes of ecotourism can be aligned with SDGs? And if yes, how can we align with the SDGs? Is there a guiding framework available for government and or for the industry actors? Thank you. So, Marcel, I think you work with the governments. What's their intervention on the destinations on this point of view?
Of course, thanks for the question. Of course, it's a really important the policy, and the problem is that, in my opinion, that my experience say that the policies are very important, of course, but that really problem is the implementation. So I think the first place that we have to measure and control all the impact are the destination, in my opinion. Less policies are very, very, very important. I was working some policy in the past. For example, responsible tourist policy in Myanmar has done a great achievement in this country. Unfortunately, now due to the change of the regime, now the situation is not really good in Myanmar. But definitely, yes, policy are a very good tools, but should be in combination with other tools, specifically in the destination.
Thank you very much. There are some other questions, but we are close to the end of our hour. So on my side, I would like, if you have any final thoughts about this webinar today, we can make really short round. So Alessandro, go first. Do you have any thoughts on today, or you want to give some messages to the audience?
I think that it's the level is high in this webinar. So I like in particular the talk about aviation of Paolo, and also the work of Sarah. And I think sustainability it's so important in general, and I think that company should calculate their emission, but also involve their customer, guests, stakeholder for climate change, for our planet.
Thank you. Cristina?
So very interesting conversation, and there's so many more things that we could be talking about. So I think maybe a follow-up will be useful at some point in the future.
Absolutely. Any final thoughts, Sarah?
I think that the points people have raised today around sustainable aviation fuel and setting up communities to ensure that the impact of tourism is positive is kind of cut to the heart of, I guess, a lot of the key sustainability issues in tourism. So I think whilst we didn't go into huge amounts of depth with in particular topics, I think it was a really good snapshot of the key issues of sustainability in tourism.
Thank you very much. Paolo?
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been actually even a learning experience me today. We could speak probably another 2 hours on this subject. That's very important. I agree with Cristina, probably follow up, including maybe some of the sustainable aviation fuel producer representative could be very interesting, but just focus on the main goal. This travel sustainability is just a small part of what we need to do in our life to tackle the global warming. It's all we're going there, because that's very important and what I'm very sensible about. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Marcello?
Thank you. It was really great discussion. I think we need I think we need further investigation, further discussion of that. I particularly appreciate. I think one of the sentence was that for tackle the sustainability, we should tackle this personally and professionally. So it's an holistic approach. So it's not only travel, but it's all our life. So it's important to have this approach for every single action that we take. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thanks to everybody, the audience. In name of UTEC Chamber, we also state that you contributed to our cause, and I will send you your certificate that you contributed to our cause with our climate action program. So thank you very much. Thank you to the audience. You can always get in contact, and we will have a networking meeting in 2 weeks from now. We can exchange more and have some other views, some connections, and let's see where this goes. Thank you very much, and goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure. So stop the recording. I will send you some follow-up emails with links, your certificate, and we stay in contact. Of course, we had really a lot to talk about. We touched really different points. And I mean, we can follow up, do some other activities together. I'm always open for that, even outside of this. with whatever. If we want to make something, I'm always open for that. You can just close the room, and that's okay. I will stay a little bit more to do some other stuff, and I will write you today, hopefully, or tomorrow morning with some follow-ups. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Nice to
you.
meet everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Nice to meet you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
You are currently the only person in this conference.